I need to sit in the pain, and I need to sit and feel it and allow myself to feel all these feelings and grieve, and but knowing that that's going to be like a muscle that we're going to build for the rest of our lives, because there's always going to be hardships that are going to come at us for the rest of our lives.
Helping you design your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. This is Win Today. And now, here's your host, Christopher Cook.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Welcome to episode 242. Guys, this week we're talking about the power of words, single parenting, and the spiral of shame, because it's pretty obvious that words can cut and destroy. You know, words can heal, and words have the ability to establish a precedent for the affection and focus of your life. And most certainly, however, as believers, we know this. Words spoken contain the power of life and death. And so this week, Caitlyn Crosby, the founder of The Giving Keys, joins us to talk about the inherent power of words and the words that are presently forming her world. But then, in a raw and candid fashion, Caitlyn pivots from this theme to talk about her journey through a new life of single parenting and what happens when shame knocks on the door of her heart. But really quickly, before we head into our conversation with Caitlyn, if you're enjoying the podcast, share it. Send a text to a friend or a family member right now and invite them to listen as well. And then you know the drill. Rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. I know I ask for this every single week, but here's why. When you rate, review, and share the podcast, the listenership grows. Simple as that. So thank you for listening and for doing just that. But right now, here's my conversation with the founder of The Giving Keys, Caitlyn Crosby. Enjoy. Caitlyn, most people know you as the founder of The Giving Keys, but for those that don't, I want to start with some of your story. Can you take us inside your history and even lead us to how The Giving Keys started?
Yes, for sure. So I grew up in Los Angeles doing music and acting and entertainment, and I was touring, and the hotel room key in New York, I thought it was really cool, so I put it around my necklace, and I lost it in the travels, and I found it again, you know, in some other state that I woke up in. And when I came back to LA, I asked a locksmith where I was in line just getting keys made if he could engrave Love Your Flaws. So I had a website called Love Your Flaws at that time. Then I saw all these old used keys on the side, and I said, ooh, and then I started making jewelry out of them, and I started selling them on tour at the merchandise tables. And they started selling out more than my CDs. So I knew that people were really resonating with these words. And this was 13 years ago, by the way. So this was kind of before that was trendy to do.
Yeah.
And then came up with this pay it forward concept. So get a word that you need to embrace in your life, but then pass it on to someone you feel needs it more than you, and then tell them to pass it on. So it's a whole pay it forward movement. And people started writing me stories on MySpace of how they got their key, and they were all really intense stories, like, you know, so-and-so was about to commit suicide, so I gave them my key. So-and-so is going through, you know, chemo, cancer, gave them my key. So-and-so is going through a divorce, gave them my key. And just a lot of really intense loss and hard situations. These keys just became these really powerful, magical tokens for people to pass around and help people through really challenging, hard times. And then I knew I wanted the money to go to some sort of charity, and waited for the missing link. And about a year later, I met this young homeless couple. They lived in a dumpster in a cardboard box, and fell in love with them, took them to dinner, had my aha moment. I was like, wait a minute, I should pay you guys to engrave the keys instead of the locksmith. So then I started paying them to engrave the words, and then hustled and got them into stores. And then little by little, this couple got their own apartment. And then fast forward, we started partnering with all these different transitional homes and nonprofits around the issue of homelessness. And we were able to employ over 140 people that are trying to transition out of homelessness.
I tend to think in life, when things like this come about, they're not just good ideas. It's sort of a manifestation of what's happening in our own life experience. Was there something happening, perhaps a significant thing happening in your life or leading up to that moment where you go to the hotel, you get the physical key, and you're like, oh my gosh, I think this is something I need, before you started giving it away? Any thoughts?
Oh, 100%.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. In my first book, I interviewed my friend, Mike Foster. Do you know him?
I don't know Mike, but our paths have crossed and we have similar friends, and I've heard all about him.
Nice. Yeah. He's amazing. And so he said, you teach best what you need to learn,
Yeah.
which is so simple, but it's so true. And, 100%. I know that I always wanted all these words on these keys because I needed the words on these keys. I needed strength. I needed hope. I needed to be fearless. I wanted to feel brave. I needed to love my flaws, and I didn't. So yes, 100%.
I mean, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, I think about words like courage, strength, hope that are on these keys, right? I'd love to hear part of your story and personal journey. I mean, growing up even, Caitlyn, what words were most meaningful to you that maybe were the starting place for the giving keys?
Yeah. Definitely love your flaws was the first phrase I ever put on a key. And because I grew up in Hollywood, and my dad manages actors and my mom was a model and an actress. And though I grew up doing all that too, I definitely struggled with comparing myself and always feeling like, just not fitting into not being this or this enough or that enough or this enough or that enough, and like obsessing over that. And I had a lot of medical issues and body image issues, and ended up having, I go into great detail in my first book about it, but it's like a little TMI, but definitely, had like surgeries that had gone wrong when I was 18 and scars and scars and scars. And then trying to learn to love my scars, and all that. But I feel like I'm so grateful that it all happened, because it really has given me such a heart for women and all the pressure that we feel to be a certain way. And, so it definitely started from Love Your Flaws. My first album, this was 100 years ago in 2008. My first album was called Flaws, and I had a song called Imperfect is the New Perfect. I had like keychains and t-shirts and bags, and everything said Love Your Flaws on it. So it wasn't just giving keys. It was definitely, I always used every type of creativity and outlet to try and re-brainwash myself.
I want to stay on scars for a moment, because I tell people often that scars tell a story. And before we hit record here today, we were chatting and I was able to share some of my story with you. Scars tell a story. And I tend to think that those scars, while painful leading up to what created them, there's redemption in them. Caitlyn, you have physical scars today. You have a story to tell. What's the story your scars are telling today?
They are saying and telling that it really is about learning to live in the discomfort, and not thinking that, this thing is going to be taken away, whether it's a hardship that you're going through. There's certain things that can't really be kind of prayed away, but it's about learning to live with the scars and learning to, like right now, for instance, I'm going through a separation, and it's been so painful. And a big part of me wants to, numb myself and distract myself and, get on the dating apps and all the things. But it's like, no, I need to sit in the pain, and I need to sit and feel it and allow myself to feel all these feelings and grieve and all the things. So I think it's the same with the scars, learning to sit with the discomfort of it all, but knowing that that's going to be like a muscle that we're going to build for the rest of our lives, because there's always going to be hardships that are going to come at us for the rest of our lives.
I hope you know, in no way am I trying to exploit your story at all, but I'd love to know if there was a word right now that you're clinging on to. And I'm so sorry about the separation that you're walking through right now. If there's a word that is just anchoring you right now in your journey, what might it be?
My word of the year is warrior. And so we have been putting that word on a lot of Giving Keys products. And same thing with designing all of our things for Giving Keys. It's same thing. It's all these words and phrases that I personally need, knowing that a lot of other people need them too. But yeah, warrior. And I've been doing these things on Mondays on IGTV called Warrior Chats, where I've been interviewing different women. And it's, part selfish because I'm just I'm wanting to, gather all of their wisdom of what being a warrior means to them, because I'm still learning what that means.
Mm-hmm. Have you found that people who gravitate to one word or another might have a life experience that is the antithesis of that very word? In other words, if I'm clinging onto hope, the reason is because I'm actually challenged to believe hope exists.
Ooh, yeah, I like that for sure. I think it's really interesting that our number one top selling word at Giving Keys is strength. And it has been for, 10 years or so. And ever since we've been gathering data analytics and so, I was pretty sure the opposite of strength was weakness, but I Googled it to make sure. And it was the opposite. So that tells us that most people, we've sold over 2 million keys. So it's like that there's a lot of people that feel weak, yeah, a lot of people feel weak. And it kind of shows that that's kind of out of all the human emotions, that's the main one people feel, at least in our demographic of people that buy Giving Keys. So.
Have you dug into the significance of the physical key itself? I think about the metaphor of what a key really represents. And here it is. You stumbled upon it in a way because it was nostalgic and sort of heartwarming in this hotel in New York that it was a physical key. But have you thought about, or is that part of the brand messaging even, to say that on this word is a key that's going to cause or catalyze increase and breakthrough? And I'm not trying to wax philosophical, I'm not trying to be woo-woo here, but Caitlyn, what I'm saying is there is something powerful about the fact that you're not engraving a word on a coin or a chain or a dog tag. It's a key. Yeah. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, for sure. I love how it was serendipitous in how symbolic it was in so many ways. How, yes, the key to unlocking everything that kind of is binding us, the key to success, the key to loving yourself, the key to your strength, the key to blah, 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 on and on and on. But also how symbolic it was that I started it, and it was, when I first started it, it had nothing to do with the issue of homelessness. And, then a year or so later when I met this couple, and it definitely felt so meant to be. And then after hiring them, and then knowing that then they got keys to their new place, how symbolic it was that it turned into that being kind of the double meaning of the keys to our own mental health and healing and hope and all of that, but also literal keys to help people so people can have a roof over their heads.
That's really good. What's the key you're wearing right now?
This one says love. I have a 1-year-old daughter and her name is Love. So this says love. And then this one says courage. And then I have these little bracelets, love and believe and warrior. Yeah.
If I can just take a moment to encourage you, I really believe that love and courage is going to surround you and flank your life in this season.
I receive it.
It doesn't fail, right? And that is, just to take an aside with everyone watching us here, this is the power and the strength of a word. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and there are power in words. Let's just hit the nail on the head for a moment, guys, and say there is power in the words we choose to use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlyn, you wrote in the book, we always have a choice in how we tell the stories of our lives as we live them. I'd love to hear you teach that out.
Yes. I think it's so easy to let life run away with us. And oftentimes we forget that we are there are a lot of things we definitely are not in control over, of course. A lot of things. But you can rewrite how you react to that thing. You can write, you can write how you accept it instead of run from it or be angry at it or use it as a weapon. There's just so many things that you can reframe, whether it's, obviously our actions, but also our thoughts and the words that we believe about ourselves, the negative self-talk and all of that.
How do you do that? How do you walk that out in your own life when words, thoughts enter your psyche? How do you arrange them throughout the junk and really allow the good words to be institutionalized in your life?
Yeah. For me, it really is about repetition. And as simple as this sounds, so many psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, they all say that so many people are resistant to doing this because maybe they think it is too trite or too simple and won't really work. But so many psychologists say that, yes, it is simple, but it does really work. You just have to do it all the time. And for instance, I was trying to believe this phrase that I had a therapist was encouraging me to write down, which was, I have an invigorating life, and I deserve to enjoy my life. And so I wrote it down in my journal, but then I forgot about it, honestly. And then a week goes by and I had another session, and I was like looking back on my journal to look through my homework, and I realized I didn't even read it at all. And so it didn't seep in my brain. I thought it was amazing when we had the session a week ago, but then it just left my brain. So then the following week, what I did, I had to open my journal and just keep it open next to my bed. And so I could see it all day long, because if I am not seeing it and I'm not being intentional about looking at it and saying it and focusing my brain on believing it, it's not going to be there. It's not going to do anything.
In your book, Caitlyn, you focused on 10 keywords from which you sprang and taught. And I want to spend some time talking about the power of belief. A lot of times it gets thrown under the bus of false hope, and we sort of tipped our hat to that. But belief shapes our actions. I'd love to know, how's the power of belief working in your life today?
I think it really is. I think oftentimes our mind goes to the negative, and we have to retrain ourselves to believe what we tell it to believe instead of letting our mind be in control of us, that we have to literally tell ourselves what to believe. And I think that's the difference between faith and belief. I think faith is, maybe a little bit, you can think of it obviously in a more spiritual way of thinking about, I choose to have faith in this thing that I don't totally see and it's not proven, but I'm gonna take a leap of faith and believe it anyway. But belief, I feel like, is more of a daily practice. But it's also, I think, can be something that you do genuinely believe is true and real. But still, both words, you have to be intentional about both of them, if they're true or not.
Walk us through some of your daily rhythms, your daily habits. How do you get those words in play when you wake up in the morning? What does your morning routine look like?
Yeah. So now that I'm embarking on being a single mother for the first time, it's hard because during the week, I wake up every morning with them really, really early, and I don't, when I was married and we had like the team routine going, we would trade off every other day. And, I would get to have my morning routine one day and then he would get to have it the next day, and we would trade off who was with the kids. But now that it's just me, except for the weekends when they go with their dad on the weekends. But now during the morning times, I've had to make some changes in the sense, like, because they were waking up really early at 5 a.m. I was like, I can't wake up at 4:30 and get my mind straight before then. So now I do something that I know some people maybe won't be supportive of, but it's working and I don't care. Which is putting on PBS Kids, and it's Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He has a little side show called Daniel Tiger, and it does teach like good emotional intelligence and self emotion regulation for kids. And so I just I put the TV on right when we wake up every morning so I can have my 5 minutes. I do that church home daily devotional, and it's like 6 minutes long.
With Judah.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
And I just listen to it. And then I do, a few other little devotionals I have in my phone if I have time, and just take some deep breaths, and I look at my affirmations, and I just get my coffee, obviously, and just have my little alone time. And it's usually, I'm lucky if I can get through the whole 6 minutes. But you just do the best that you can.
For sure.
And it's not like I'm listening also to Daniel Tiger and like screaming kids in the back, but that's the best that I can do right now.
And I think there's grace for that space. Absolutely. Even if it's 30 seconds. And I think I want to say to people listening right now, and maybe a young mom is listening right now in the same place as Caitlyn, I want to say 30 seconds is better than 0. 15 seconds is better than 0. 6 minutes, guys, like Caitlyn just said, is better than 0. Grace for your space is, I think, what I want to empower people with today. I mean, Caitlyn, with that being said, you're bombarded with stimuli that you can't necessarily control as a mom, and just the other things that you're navigating in life right now. What do you struggle to believe about yourself today?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a long list. I'm like, what is TMI? What is too much information?
Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
When I read your questions before, I was like, there's so many that I'm constantly fighting through. Working to believe. I mean, I think right now the most glaring one is a very new one, which is being scared that I am a single mom, and I'm my age, and how I'm going to provide for myself and the kids when I kind of did sacrifice so much. And I thought my life was going to go in a different direction, and just kind of getting down on myself and letting fear kind of take over that, like doom and gloom, and like, oh no, disaster, and who's going to want a single mom of 2, and blah, 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 like that whole thing. So I definitely can go there, and that's underneath a lot of it, but I'm constantly having to fight through it, and focus on the things that are special about me, and just trusting God that He has a plan for me, whatever that is. If it's for me to be alone, quote unquote, and thinking through that, like maybe that's actually not so bad, or maybe He will provide in a different way financially, or maybe there's like other projects that I need that I'm meant to do that will provide for myself and family. So just constantly trying to realize the negative self-talk and fear that I'm living in, but just also constantly writing in my journal those not just positive affirmations, but just even like, I trust that I will be taken care of, that this will unfold the way it's meant to, and I will be okay, and it's going to be okay. So it's just daily reminding myself to not let myself go into the doom and gloom, which is super easy for me to go into.
Thanks for sharing that. And would you be so kind as to even just take a moment, because I know for a fact there are probably single parents listening who are in the exact same circumstance as you, wondering who's going to want a single mom, who's going to want a single dad. That's a visceral reality for many. Would you take a moment just to encourage, for the thousands of people that are listening, watching right now, what would you want to say to single parents who are just trying to get through the day and wrangle their own demons and walk through the day successfully?
Well, first, I would say you are not alone. I haven't promoted it yet. But I started a little Instagram with my girlfriend, and it's called Single Mom Edit. And we want to build a community for single parents to not feel alone. And that's what it says in the bio. You are not alone. So I think that's number one. You are not alone. And for me, I think that brings me so much comfort knowing that that this has been done before. You will get through it. And there's so many incredible people that come out of quote unquote broken homes that have been raised by single parents. There's so many incredible men and women that are, you know, making headlines and on the cover of magazines and all the things, and they were raised by single parents. So, I think a lot of times I get scared that they're not, my kids are going to be damaged and in different ways. And, it is very hard for them and it's really challenging, but think of all the good things it's going to produce in them, whether it's resilience and creativity and emotional depth and compassion and empathy and that knowing that, yeah, we can't control what happened, whether someone left us or we decided to leave because we were in an, unhealthy situation for ourselves or our kids, that, we can only do the best that we can do. And, from this point on, wherever you guys are, I mean, it can really only get better from here. And also knowing that you maybe conquered a fear, like for instance, for me, this was my worst nightmare. But now that I'm living in my worst nightmare, I'm like, it's really not that bad. Like, and it's kind of empowering to know that I can get through this. So you can get through this, and it's only going to go up from here. And there's so much depth that we're even learning that maybe will make us more attractive to someone else in the future that we are, someone we're better suited for.
I think it's pretty remarkable that you were willing to be so vulnerable for a moment and just validate perhaps the thoughts and emotions of those who are listening or watching who are single parents and saying, who's going to want me? And I think that's a core desire of our human nature, whether single, married, divorced, whatever, is a sense of belonging. And I think as an aside to that, Caitlyn, what I just heard you say is that there's a level of resilience that is being built in you by being willing to be present with the unknown. Like you just said, I don't necessarily know how this is going to work out, but I do know it's going to work out. Yeah. It's really powerful. Yeah.
There's really no other option. Because if you don't believe that, then you're just going to allow yourself to, that's where you get into back to that word hopeless. And you're just going to be living in this depressed, hopeless space. And my favorite word, people always say, what's your favorite word of all the giving keys? And I always say hope. Hope is my favorite word. Because without hope, I mean, we always need hope, no matter who we are, where we are, whatever circumstance. It's all about hope.
What do you think would be happening right now in terms of your day-to-day and your psyche if you actually, because you talked about this in the book, the power of moving beyond denial. Like, this isn't about denying the reality of what we're walking through. What do you think would happen on the other side of this if you were just sort of in denial of the pain and the reality of what you're walking through? What do you think would happen?
I think you heal. You either don't heal or you heal more slowly. Like, for instance, I was talking to a friend who went through divorce a couple of years ago, and she was saying how she also kind of, wanted to numb out, and she was so excited to feel free and feel feelings that she hasn't felt, in a really long time. And, she was dating and was so excited, feeling all these fireworks, for the first time in a long time. And how, and then after those little breakups, then she said she felt so even more heartbroken than her divorce, because it was like on this open wound and you're so vulnerable. And then she goes, and the healing, the grieving and the healing wasn't happening. She's like, I thought that I was fine and that I was healed enough that, oh, look, I can feel all these feelings. It's great. I must be healed. Or I must not need time alone. But she was like, no, the longer that you work to be in denial and to cover up the pain and the grief, the longer your healing is going to take. So if you want to just like get the healing over with, just got to dive right into the pain. And that's something I've been trying to do. Like during the week, it's hard to really have time to grieve because I'm either with the kids or working. And then at night I'm like exhausted and crash. But on the weekends when I don't have the kids, I have been kind of going back and forth from being a little bit in denial and then grieving, and like the grieving is so intense, like, but I let myself do it. Like I'll let myself go to a place that was like a really sad, symbolic place. Like I just went this last weekend and sat outside where I got where I tried on my wedding dress, and I just sat there and let myself be really sad. I was staying at a friend's house, and it was like the first place that my husband and I had our first kiss, and I like saw, where we did it. And I was just like bawled my eyes out and let myself bawl my eyes out. And just things like that. I think instead of just like rushing by it, that's what I'm kind of having to do right now for sure.
I'd say you're pretty brave.
Oh, thanks.
Caitlyn, I'm thinking right now about the exercise that you've sort of demonstrated for us. And I think it's a willingness to get inside yourself and ask the tough questions. And I believe our willingness to ask ourselves quality questions and then sit with the answers, process through them, and reflect upon their significance can really incrementally change the direction of our lives. I'd love for you to talk about the strength of reflection through your life today. Because even just the example of the wedding dress is powerful.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to be said for reflecting and then realizing patterns, unhealthy patterns in our lives, so we can try and not keep repeating them. And just being really self-aware of our, not only, well, I was going to say, being really self-aware of our triggers and the patterns, and reflecting on the same choices maybe we perhaps continue to make, which create the same outcome, right? So, people say,
right.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different response. And so I think being brave and wise and mature enough to stop, to slow down, and to not have that, to let yourself have delayed gratification, to not just go for the thing that feels good now and that feels comfortable, because probably the thing that feels good now and comfortable is the thing that you've already done a million times that's not working. So instead of doing the thing that feels good and gratifying now, really look at those things and those decisions and those habits, and see how you can kind of choose a more patient route that will create more depth and wisdom and healing inside of us, to create new paths not only in our brains, but just in our lives.
How are you taking steps to be more patient with yourself these days?
Yeah. I think it is really just letting myself cry. And I think, so many people are like, oh, it's only been 3 months or 4 months. Like, wow, you're doing so great. And just like kind of patting myself on the back a little bit, like, wow, this is a lot. And I am overcoming so much, and just allowing myself to feel proud of myself, and allowing myself to feel empowered, and using this as a situation, as an opportunity. Yes, an opportunity to grow, but using it as an opportunity to feel proud of myself, which creates confidence, which is something that I lack. So,
wow,
that's a good thing.
Well, there's a C.S. Lewis quote in your book, and everything we've talked about sort of gives me context, at least I think it does. You put this quote in your book, and it's this: we're not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We're wondering how painful the best will turn out to be. Why'd you put that in the book?
I think for me, it's back to kind of what I said before, is that it's having patience to not just go for the instant gratification, because if we don't know, like, quote unquote, God's plan for us, let's just say it's like trying to find a husband or a mate or job or whatever. And instead of feeling that real peace and knowing that we're doing all the right steps and having that patience, but it's like, oh, yep, you'll do. This is good enough. This is good enough. Yeah, this job's good enough. This person's good enough. They're good enough. Just because I want to feel the high and I want to feel good. But that's like really not taking the time to really be sure and prayerful and like, do you feel a deep peace in knowing that this is the right situation for you? But because we don't want to go through the pain of waiting, we don't want to go through the pain of being patient. We don't have to go through the pain of feeling alone or not feeling a high in some way.
When you were talking about strength, you wrote that big emotions always accompany the tough stuff in life. And then, of course, you went on to write about denial. You said living in denial doesn't do you any favors. If at all possible, slow down. So correlate big emotions to hard seasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. For any parents listening, I'm sure you've heard that, in certain positive parenting teachings, they always encourage you to talk to your toddler in this way, saying it's okay to have big feelings. It's okay to have messy feelings. It's okay to have big, messy emotions, big feelings. And it's kind of like a term that helps kids feel okay, that they feel so out of control. And I think it's so interesting that it's not just for kids. I think we as humans, we get big emotions too. We get big, messy feelings too. And first, allowing ourselves the grace to know that we're human, we're not robots. It's okay. It's okay to have big, messy feelings. And then you won't go into the shame spiral if you give yourself, if you're allowing yourself to have those big emotions. But yeah, big emotions and big feelings don't usually come from easy situations. Maybe if you win the lottery or you get your dream job, or of course there's big emotions that come from good, exciting things, of course. But I was, more talking about them stemming from hardships and diving into those things and really genuinely looking at every single hardship as an opportunity to grow. So the bigger the feelings and the emotions are, the more opportunity there is for a more depth of healing.
Wow. You mentioned a shame spiral, and I think that's a familiar experience to many people. Caitlyn, when a shame spiral hits your life, what happens next?
Ooh, that's a fun one. I would say, to be honest, like the unhealthy side sometimes goes to like the doom, like, oh, this is always going to be here. I still haven't, gotten healing from this one yet, to be honest. But then it's about, I think, catching that negative thought and going back to that hope, going back to like, no, I will put in the work. I can put in the work. I can reverse this. I can have healing here. I will have healing here. And I love what you said earlier, that it's not necessarily like, what did you say? It's not going to be like a breakthrough, but a walkthrough.
Right.
I'd never heard that before. But yeah, it's not like, oh, I'm going to be healed of this thing. But it's like, no, it's going to probably be a process, and it's going to be slow, but it's going to be slow healing, and that's okay.
I want to encourage someone who's listening today who is really resonating with Caitlyn's circumstance, and perhaps you yourself are walking through something devastating like this. And I want to say that if you're not experiencing a breakthrough, it doesn't mean you won't see victory. It might mean that the walkthrough is causing you to build muscles, that you're actually going to have something to give to other people and to bring hope to other people. Caitlyn, because a miracle happens in a moment, but a lot of times in life, we discount the process of healing. And I think about right now, even what I've experienced, what you're walking through right now. If we break a bone, oftentimes before it sets, the doctor will break it again to ensure that it heals properly. And I think there are people joined with us today who are experiencing that second breaking process, if you will, and it's really hard. And I want to say, I see you. You're not alone. But hold on, because the process of healing will actually cause you to heal properly. And when you heal properly, you're actually going to have something of value to not only bring to those who matter most in your life, but to the rest of the world around you. Because at the end of the day, this thing called life is about adding value to other people. And it is not at all, Caitlyn, to minimize the severity of what I've walked through, you are walking through, or what anyone else is walking through. So I really appreciate your vulnerability in this. I had no idea we were going to take the conversation in this direction, but your story's powerful and nothing's wasted. Caitlyn, finish this sentence if you would. I wish more people blank.
I wish more people had compassion for themselves.
Why?
Because I think it's it probably back to what you said earlier, probably because I want that for myself too.
Yeah.
But I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in the doing and the have-tos and the responsibilities and the stressors in life that we skip letting ourselves not only be grateful for everything we have, but just enjoy ourselves and enjoy the existence that we are, that we get to be ourselves. And it's kind of sad to think that so much time is perhaps wasted and not like letting ourselves celebrate ourselves and enjoying ourselves.
Even in the mess.
Yeah.
Perhaps even especially in the mess.
Yeah.
We all have mindsets and beliefs about ourselves and about life and others, Caitlyn, and this is a challenging question. Take it wherever you'd like, but which of your current mindsets is most likely to be wrong right now?
Ooh. Oh, I'm sweating. Gosh, they all feel so vulnerable. I mean, I'm already such an open book, but maybe, I mean, I could go one direction, but I'm kind of going another direction, which is this feeling I have of I'm always overwhelmed. But really, and that is my mindset. My mindset is that I'm so overwhelmed. I have this and this and this and this and this, and they're all spinning around my brain. But instead, the other day when I made a little priority list, I was like, wait a minute, I really don't have that much to do today. Like, it's really not that overwhelming. But once you write it down, I realized, like, this is actually manageable.
It's really remarkable that you took us there, because when you write down the reality of what you're experiencing, you can see it objectively, and what you're writing down are words. And this goes back to where we started. We've literally made a full circle. It's the power of words. Where there's hopelessness, there's hope. Where you see weakness, there's strength. And it goes back to, Caitlyn, I think the mission that you're offering people, it's not just a token item, but instead you're giving people a tangible expression of a reality that is yet ahead when they're facing hell in front of them. So I'm grateful for that.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. And I really do hope, you know, like we talked about, so many of the words in this new book. The first book was definitely more of a memoir and diving deep into a lot of stories, and it's kind of really funny. But then the new book is definitely more diving deep into all the different core words: hope, love, dream, believe, faith. And then at the end, there's these reflection questions that I think are really helpful. And again, seeing the words and seeing what you need to work on, and instead of letting our mind run away and tell us what we should think, like, no, we're in control of our mind. We're going to tell our mind what to think and what to believe. And but it's really that practice. So I really hope that this book helps people be intentional about how they want to live and think and be and show up in the world for themselves and their families and friends. And yeah.
That's really good. Guys, you can go to wintoday.tv/episode 242 right now to get a copy of Caitlyn's brand new book. Caitlyn, last question. Is there a question you wish more people asked you?
Hmm. What makes you, this is really simple, but what makes you the most happy?
So what makes you happiest?
I would say, well, two things. One, being at the beach.
You don't live in a horrible state for that.
I know that's we get the beach. And I think, it starts with being able to take deep breaths and fresh air and the beauty and the nature. And that leads to the shoulders going down, which leads to happiness. And then also a good old, just nice, yummy restaurant with amazing foodie food, good ambiance, and getting dressed cute with a girlfriend and just talking about all of our stuff, all of our everything going on. That probably makes me the most happy.
Awesome. Well, Caitlyn, thank you again for being here today, and I hope you get to do that soon.
Thanks so much.
wintoday.tv/episode 242. That's the place to access show notes, where you'll find a link to purchase a copy of Caitlyn's brand new book. And hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, I'm sure you'll also enjoy episode 214, Stop Hiding and Stop Playing Small. That was with my friend Sam Acho, as well as episode 231, Finding Happiness, Grief and Loss, and Why Your Scars Tell a Story. Again, with another friend, Daniel Fusco. Episode 214, episode 231. Go get both of those right now. And hey, next week here on the show, I'm joined by Sean Boltz. I'm so excited to share this conversation because we're going to dive into the topic of hearing the voice of God, discerning the Lord's voice for our life and for our purpose. Here's a preview.
But it comes consistently through you. And then once you understand how he's speaking through you and in you, you can direct it even more towards yourself or others. And so to me, I don't want to just let things happen to me the rest of my life. I want to actually participate and partner. I don't want to control it, but I want to partner with God. And because of so many of the ways he speaks are flowy, they're in the sense of they're intuitive. We have to learn how to look at our intuitive life. And I think, we've been doing this a lot in coaching with business leaders and helping them. I don't give them words at all. I'm probably prophesying in the season over anybody that we're having time with, prayer times with. I'm helping them to see where God's shown up and how they partner to that show up, and giving God the glory for the win so that they have a prototype for how to do it again.
Sean Boltz is here next week. Don't miss it, guys. Thanks again for joining the conversation this week right here on Win Today. I believe people just like you should be able to live successful, meaningful lives, and that's why I want to invite you to join the inner circle of readers on my email list who get weekly, well-researched self-improvement tips. So right now, go to wintoday.tv to sign up. It's absolutely free. And lastly, whether you're a new listener or have been listening to the show for a while, I'd really appreciate your rating and review of Win Today on the Apple Podcast app. So right now, will you write a short, honest review? Doing so helps expand the listenership of Win Today, and that would mean a ton to me. Thanks again for listening today. I hope you have an awesome week. We'll talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.